Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for that introduction, Chris, and for your service in all senses for this great institution and our country. Minister McGuinty, Chief of the Defence Staff, carry on, and all the Canadian Armed Forces members here today, thank you for joining us, and thank you for your service. It is great to be at CFB Trenton, Canada's largest Air Force base, home to generations of service members whose dedication and courage represent the very best of our country. Home to 8 Wing. This base is a hub for response and airlift operations in Canada and around the world. Virtually every mission involves CFB Trenton. With a fleet of tactical and strategic transport aircraft, the capabilities here are diverse. From delivering supplies to the high Arctic, we were just talking about ALERT, to facilitating peacekeeping missions around the world with our allies. Every year, hundreds of Air, Army, and Naval cadets come here to learn, to train, and to test themselves, preparing to wear the uniform and carry forward the proud tradition of service you represent. You in Trenton take on immense responsibilities, knowing it will require extraordinary personal sacrifice to protect Canada's peace and security. And the calls on your dedication have only been growing. We're living in an increasingly dangerous and divided world. The international order, built after the Second World War and reshaped following the Cold War, is under pressure. Russia is emboldened. China is more assertive. The long-held view that Canada's geographic location will protect us is becoming archaic. Our Arctic waters are increasingly open, and there have been rapid advances in cyber, artificial intelligence, quantum, and advanced missile capabilities. Climate change is making our country more vulnerable. The Arctic's melting. Our wildfires and floods are more frequent and devastating. And these are all threats to which the Canadian Armed Forces responds. The Canadian Forces keep our people and communities safe through major disasters. I'll give examples. This summer, Canadian Forces have helped communities in Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, Quebec, soon Newfoundland and Labrador, including already by safely evacuating over 6,000 Canadians. This week alone, Canadian Forces members, originally from CFB Trenton, airdropped life-saving humanitarian aid into Gaza. Canadian Armed Forces are standing guard in Latvia and continue to deploy around the world to stand with our allies in defense of peace and security. When a crisis breaks, or Canada's safety is threatened anywhere in the world, this base is the first to spring into action. And from CFB Trenton, fallen heroes have been repatriated to their families with honor, carried along the highway of heroes, draped in the maple leaf, to be etched in our memories. CFB Trenton is much more than an Air Force base. It's a community. And here, service isn't just lived by those in uniform, but also reflected in the strength, the support, and yes, the sacrifice of every military family. Their service is grounded in values, in a love for our country that makes those sacrifices possible, commitments that keep Canada strong. And in the minister's visit a few weeks ago, and visits to come, in my remarks today, we're investing in that strength. Le nouveau gouvernement du Canada va réinvestir pour rebâtir et réarmer les forces armées canadiennes grâce à une stratégie reposant sur 4 piliers. Nous allons investir dans ce qui est la base de la défense, ce qui servent, ainsi que l'équipement et l'infrastructure qu'ils utilisent. Nous allons améliorer et moderniser nos capacités militaires avec plus d'avions, de véhicules de combat, de drones et de systèmes de détection et en repérant les navires de la marine canadienne. Nous allons renforcer l'industrie canadienne de la défense et finalement, nous allons diversifier les partenariats du Canada en matière de défense. Au cœur de ces investissements se trouvent les hommes et les femmes des forces armées canadiennes. Canadians have always been proud of our armed forces and respect your unwavering dedication. But just as we have taken our security for granted for too long we have relied too heavily on that dedication of women and men who keep us secure. As the demands on our Canadian Armed Forces have increased, their resources and their salaries have not kept pace. And these are the men and women we trust to wear the maple leaf, the Canadian flag, and to risk their lives for it. Their pay, your pay, should reflect the weight of your responsibilities. In Halifax a few months ago, I shared our vision to rebuild, rearm, and reinvest in the Canadian Armed Forces in order to protect Canada's sovereignty, to bolster our industrial capacity and create new careers for our workers. And at that time, I committed that Canada's new government would raise the pay of all members of the Canadian Armed Forces. And today, with Minister McGuinty and with Deputy Millett, I'm proud to fulfill that commitment by announcing that all members of the Canadian Armed Forces will receive a pay raise. Specifically, there will be an 8% raise for colonels and above, a 13% raise for lieutenant colonels and below, and a 20% raise in starting pay for privates in the regular force. These increases will be retroactive to April 1st of this year. There will be increases on top of base pay, putting more money in the pockets of everyone. We will also introduce a new military service pay benefit specifically tied to time in service, so that paychecks honor years in uniform. We will also introduce additional supports in the coming months for members preparing for combat and high-risk training, so they are paid fairly in addition for those intense commitments. We will make posting allowances fairer, based on how many times members have had to uproot their lives, the lives of their families, to protect ours. And will give more support when those moves take them far from their families. And if the members of the forces are called to serve here at home in a flood, a wildfire, or another disaster, we'll recognize that service with increased pay as well. And finally, we will target extra support to the critical trades where we need the personnel the most, so we can keep the Canadian Armed Forces ready at all times. These increases in pay and incentives will help us to revitalize and transform recruitment and retention, to bolster force readiness, and to ensure that members in uniform have the confidence and certainty that they need. At Canadian Armed Forces bases like Trenton, service isn't an abstract ideal, it's a lived reality. And in that lived reality, behind every member in uniform, there's a family that serves right alongside them. Spouses who pack up the house on short notice, move across the country or around the world and build a new life from scratch. Kids who have to change schools and leave friends behind. Parents who spend holidays with an empty seat at the table, trusting the child they raised will make it home safely. So when we raise pay, we're not just recognizing the Armed Forces member, as important as that is, we're also helping to strengthen their families. Higher pay means greater financial resilience, more stability, more career choices for spouses, and more opportunities for their children to pursue their dreams. Lorsque les membres des forces armées seront mobilisés ici, au pays ou outre-mer, ils pourront se concentrer sur leur mission, sans autre préoccupation. C'est comme ça que nous faisons en sorte que lorsque les Canadiens et Canadiennes sont en détresse, lorsque nos alliés appellent à l'aide, ou lorsque notre souveraineté est menacée, les forces armées canadiennes seront prêtes. Now, in addition to the substantial pay raises, we're focused on providing our CAF members with the resources that they need and deserve. Canada's new government recognizes that our military infrastructure and equipment have aged, hindering our military preparedness. We recognize that only one of our 4 submarines is seaworthy, that less than half our maritime fleet and land vehicles are operational. So we're modernizing our military equipment and technology. We're building up our own defense and security industries and diversifying those international defense partnerships. With investments of over $9 billion this year, Canada will reach our 2% NATO pledge, 2% of GDP NATO pledge, half a decade before schedule. And we will further accelerate our investments in years to come. At the NATO summit earlier this year in The Hague, the Minister and I announced Canada's intention to meet the new defense investment pledge of 5% of annual GDP over the next decade, by 2035. And to put that into context, our total spending on defense and security will quadruple by the end of this decade relative to 2023-24 levels. Now, we are laser focused on ensuring that this spending has the maximum impact on behalf of all Canadians. That means working with the best partners. It means getting maximum value for money with the greatest benefit for jobs and economic activity here in Canada. And that's why in June we concluded the new EU-Canada Security and Defence Partnership to advance Canada's participation in the European Security Initiative and Rearm Europe plan. This will give us better access to European defence partners for our needs, and it will give our defence suppliers greater opportunities to help supply Europe's needs. We are also in the process of creating a new defence procurement agency to move at pace to get our armed forces the equipment that they need when they need it. And our investments in defence will expand Canada's industrial capacity so we can equip Canadian armed forces using Canadian steel, Canadian aluminum, Canadian critical minerals, Canadian cyber, and Canadian lumber. We will increase our security presence around the world, including to protect NATO's eastern flank, and by protecting Canada, we will protect NATO's western flank. Pour que nous puissions nous battre sur de nouveaux champs de bataille en territoire inconnu. Pour que nous puissions défendre chaque centimètre de notre territoire souverain, des fonds marins à l'Arctique, en passant par le cyberspace. Pour que nos soldats, nos marins, nos aviateurs et nos cyberspécialistes aient les outils dont ils ont besoin pour protéger les Canadiens, nos intérêts et nos alliés. Pour que nos femmes et nos hommes en uniforme puissent servir avec confiance. So much of Canada's history has been written by those who served in our armed forces. As a country, we came of age at Vimy Ridge. We cemented our reputation as defender of freedom on Juno Beach and as a liberator of the Netherlands. Now that story continues to be written by heroes such as the men and women standing in this hangar, those seated as well. Those chapters that they're writing, those chapters that are being written by the Canadian Armed Forces, may be new, but the theme remains the same. In times of crisis, when someone sees a maple leaf on a sleeve, they see hope, and they get help. So we're committing the resources so that the women and men of the Canadian Forces can deliver that help. because at this hinge moment of history, Canada's leadership will be measured not just by the strength of our values, but also by the value of our strength.